Welcome to the Apply Club Health. My name is Heinrich. I'm part of the organizing team and will be moderating most of the event today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're very excited to have Moritz here, who will tell us something interesting, I know that he will, about digital health applications in Germany. Be aware we are recording this part of the event. We have just started, and it will go on until the end of the presentation. The discussion will not be recorded, so we can talk more freely about that. If you don't want to be on the recording, turn your camera off and your microphone off, and then you are basically invisible. The recording will be shown on YouTube later, maybe a week or so from now. And we will let you know through the usual channels. We'll talk about that. You also find links in the channel to know that. A couple of words about Apply Club Health. We are a platform and a community to discuss how to use an anthropological lens to understand and to improve health and healthcare. At least that's the idea. We're also a place to talk, to meet, to exchange ideas, to exchange experiences, to share opportunities as well. It's really meant for different people, from anthropological students to academics, but also industry practitioners, as well as consultants, and whoever is interested, of course. We are part of the Applied Anthropology Network, which itself is part of the European Association of Social Anthropology. There's a number of other Apply clubs. We are just one of them. There are 7 of us in the organizing team, besides me. It's, well, I shouldn't forget anybody. And you may wave, or you may see in the name when I call you. There's Gaia, there's Margaret, there's Carol, not here today. There's Milko, there's Ute, and there's Beth, also not here today. Just briefly about, this is a Zoom event. Now, if you don't mind, turn your camera on, because that's usually nicer for us to see who is here. But mute yourself so that we don't hear any additional noises. The speaker presentation will be about 20 to 25 minutes. After that, there will be ample time for questions and for discussion, of course. If you have questions for the speaker, you can write them in the chat. But also after the presentation, you can raise your hand and you can ask it yourself, depending on what you prefer. If there is an immediate, like a technical issues or so, you can also raise your hand and ask that. We will see that, hopefully, and you can write in the chat. Now, if there's a question from you guys at the moment, let us know. If there's something technical, you have issues. Otherwise, I will introduce the speaker. It's a particular pleasure for me to introduce Moritz Göldner here as a speaker, not just because of the upcoming talk, which I know will be very interesting, but also because he's a dear colleague and friend of mine. We have worked together on a number of projects and have done at the university different workshops together with students. But more officially, Moritz is an assistant professor for data-driven innovation at the Hamburg University of Technology. His research explores the intersection of innovation management, healthcare, and engineering. One of his focus topics is digital health applications, and that's what we're going to hear about today. He's also interested at the intersection between sustainability in healthcare and also how big data sets might help to design user-centric innovation in the future. Prior to this position that he has now at the university, he worked as an innovation consultant and is one of the co-founders of, or is the co-founder of the consultancy Innovating Healthcare. Now his passion for user-centric innovation comes from his dissertation work, which was on patients and caregivers as user innovators, driven by their own unmet medical needs, and then developing basically solutions for them. The title of the talk is 3 Years of Apps on Prescription in Germany, Promise and Reality of Promoting Patient Benefits through Digital Health Applications. And I hand over to Moritz now.
Thank you very much, Heinrich. Thank you to all of you for joining. Thank you for the invitation. You missed one thing, Heinrich, that you are the other co-founder of Innovating Healthcare. So that's where we also work together, and we did, I think, many nice studies together at that time. Okay. So I'm now working at the university again for about 1.5 years, and one of my research focus is on those so-called apps on prescription in Germany. It's not happening very often that there is a big regulatory shift in our country, particularly not in Germany in the healthcare sector, because we were always very poor with that respect. So the idea, so I don't need this anymore, but feel free to contact me on LinkedIn here. Before I start, so I'm a biomedical engineer. I'm always interested in healthcare and in engineering digitization, but I always have a dedicated focus on innovation, and particularly user innovation. And this is all about understanding the problems and unmet medical needs of humans and to connect it with the other areas. So this was always the sweet spot that I really much liked. And also now in the field of data-driven innovation. So I'm not a data scientist, but I'm a biomedical engineer with a background in innovation management. So we are still very much focusing on the human and the user. And also for this topic, for DiGA, I think it's very important to emphasize this. And as I said, in Germany, we were not really good in digital healthcare. There was a study in 2018. I mean, we could talk for ages about the study, but what basically came out is that Germany was very poor, second last place here with respect to digitization in the healthcare sector. And we are not only poor in digital healthcare, but also in general. Our healthcare system, for those who don't know it, it was really great when it was invented in June 1883. That was the Chancellor Otto von Bismarck at the time. It was calling the law concerning health insurance for workers. And this was the foundation of what we have as a statutory health insurance today. About 88% of people in Germany are insured in that health insurance, and it's one of the largest markets in healthcare. But still, having this great and old health insurance doesn't mean that people in Germany live particularly long. And life expectancy is one parameter, and money spent on healthcare is another parameter. They're maybe both not perfect, but what you can see from the red dots is here that Germany is spending quite a lot of money, but not gaining so much life expectancy out of it. Only the US is worse, but other countries like Japan or Switzerland, they do much better with the with less money they spend. So one reason for this might be a lack in primary care or too little prevention, but also poor digitization of the overall healthcare system. And about a couple of years ago, the lawmakers decided to change this, and they brought basically 3 new digital elements in the German healthcare system that are reimbursed by the statutory health insurance. One is digital health applications, what we call DiGA. I will use the German abbreviation here. Then we also have digital applications for nursing care, what we call DiPA, and there's also prevention tools available. And all of them are on the market. For the DiPA, we don't see the apps yet there, but the pathway is there. And for DiGA, we have about 50 apps now on the market, and this will be the focus of today. But this is not happening very often, that we have regulatory innovation in healthcare. That's why we found it interesting to share this today with you, because it's just so special and because it has a real impact on how we think digital healthcare in Germany here. So starting with a small definition, no worries, there won't be so many definitions, but this needs to be done here. So a DiGA is a low-risk medical device, so a class 1 or 2A medical device where the primary function is digital technologies. And it has some use cases here, so it should assist in detection, monitoring, treatment, or elevation of disease, and so on and so forth. But basically, it's a low-risk medical device, and it's relying on digital technologies. That means there's no prevention in here, so you have to have a disease to be eligible for DiGA, and it just says digital, it doesn't say app. So it could be anything, it could be a browser-based thing, it could be something for VR glass, whatever will be invented in the future, it just needs to be digital. I think this is really important here. And the primary mode of action needs to be this digital technology. So what we don't see, or what is not allowed is, for instance, to have communication tools with the healthcare professional, for instance, where the primary function is the healthcare professional at the other line, and we just have something like Zoom in between. So that's not allowed. It needs to be something in the hands of patients. It should be used by patients, or in the combination with a healthcare professional, but it's not something that would help, for instance, in a medical office to improve the process or something like this. So they are truly patient-centric, and they really depend on the interactions with the user. Interestingly, what we see in the market, that most of them are targeting cognitive behavioral therapy, because this is also nice to do in a digital setting, but we also see other treatment options. I will show some later on. Yeah, and as I said, the interaction with the healthcare professional is limited, so it's also not allowed to have an automated data transfer all the time. Yeah. How can it be prescribed? It has to be approved by the so-called Federal Institute for Drugs and Medical Devices. In German, we call it BfArM. And it has to be listed in an own app store, so to say. And it has to be prescribed by a healthcare professional. That means a physician or also psychotherapist. That's also new, because in Germany, those are usually not allowed to prescribe drugs, for instance. It can also be given out with the permission of a health insurance. That's also new. And there are some rules you have to follow. I don't want to go into detail, but data protection security is important, and you have to check all the boxes here in the regulatory framework to be allowed to apply for a DiGA. But there are two main innovations that came that I want to emphasize here. And the one is the so-called positive care effect. And so it is extending on how we measure what is valuable to a patient. And the second one is the so-called fast-track procedure and delayed evidence. That means that the overall process is quick, and that we have to deliver the final study only after 1 year after we got listed. So we don't have to have everything at the beginning here. So those are maybe the 2 points that I want to share with you here, to memorize after this talk, that this is something really special what happened here. So when we do regular medical studies, we know what we will measure at the end. We will measure a medical benefit. That means what is the state of the health of the patient, and is it improved afterwards? Do they live longer? Is the disease shorter, or is the quality of life improving? We know how to measure it, and it's very established. But what we see in this DiGA law is that there's also a new category of benefit. And this was not reimbursed before in health insurance, and that's the so-called patient-relevant improvements of structures and processes. So what is this? It might be a better coordination of procedures. It might be alignment of the treatment according to the medical guidelines or standards. It might be adherence to the overall therapy. It might be better access to care, patient safety, health literacy, autonomy, whatever it is. And this is really something that was never really reimbursed before, and where the regulatory bodies now say, if you can prove that you do this, you will also get reimbursement. By the way, they don't tell how to measure it, and this is also a big issue that we see right now in the market, because nobody knows how to assess this. But in general, I think this is also for all of you maybe most interesting. At the very beginning of each DiGA study, or if each DiGA development, we really need to find out what kind of benefit, what kind of positive healthcare do we want to develop. And also Heinrich and I together worked on a study where we did interviews and visited also some healthcare professionals, where we try to find out what kind of positive healthcare could potentially a digital intervention lead here. We could have medical benefit or a patient-relevant improvement of success in process, or both together, but still it has to come for a dedicated target group. So you can't just say, I'm a tool for adherence for everybody, but it has to be for a category within the ICD-10 here. So this is basically just one innovation. And the second innovation is the so-called fast-track procedure. What you can see here on the left side is that you file for application, and you need to, of course, fulfill all the requirements that I've just shown you earlier: security, data protection, and so on, interoperability. And you have to prove the positive healthcare effect. That means medical benefit or the structural or procedural improvements. And if you have both at the beginning, then you can apply for the final listing right from the beginning. But if you have only the requirements done and not the positive healthcare effect, you only would get a preliminary admission. And then after 1 year, you have to show the final study and get a final admission. Or you get rejected if you can't manage to prove that. And this is the second innovation, because you don't have to have all the studies at hand at the beginning. You actually have to show a little bit that you can collect data with your DiGA, and you have to show like some first 20, 30 users enrolled and so, but you don't have to have the full study with the full significance then. And this is something special, because for tangible medical device or for pharma, it would be impossible to bring something into the market and then show that it works only afterwards. I don't think this is unsecure or something, because it's a low-risk medical device and has been classified, so there's kind of a layer of security. But still, it was kind of brave from the Federal Ministry of Health at that time to bring this to the market. Also, people are complaining about this, but I personally believe this is really a real true game changer, because it allows also companies without very large funding to go to the market at the beginning. And why is it called fast track? Because this whole application period is maximum 3 months. Actually, 3 months after the documents have been after it has been checked that all documents are complete. So it's rather 4 months in reality, but still it's really short. And the preliminary admission is then 12 months, and then there's the final admission. Of course, there are some price negotiations afterwards only. In the first 12 months, you can select a price on your own. And then afterwards, you have to do negotiations with the health insurance, and also the doctors can be reimbursed. And there are different DiGAs available. We see many in the mental health space. We see it for adipositas. We see it for sleep. We see it for heart diseases. We see it for anxiety. We see it for tinnitus. Endometriosis is one. So a lot of tools that help patients to better cope with their disease or even treat the disease. So are there some burning questions right now? Anything that you want to ask? I could cover some small questions now, or I will just continue. All
We
right.
don't have anything in the chat, so maybe you continue.
Okay, good. So as of now, we have, as of October 1st, we have 49 DiGA in the market here, but we have 190 tried to go to the market, 16 were declined, 100 were rejected in the process, or rejected them on their own. 18 are currently unevaluated, and 6 were delisted during the after listing, and then they were kicked out again because they couldn't deliver the results that were like enough for the final listing here. We see that most of them are class 1 medical device, because this is a little bit surprising, because the regulations got higher and everybody thought it would be 2A mostly, but this is only 2 so far. And we see it's about 50-50 between preliminary listing and final listing or permanent listing in the market. We see that out of those 49 who are there right now and those who are currently permanent, 10 only went for the permanent listing from the beginning, and 14 were preliminary listed and then permanent. Evidence works. So with the preliminary listing, then they do the full study and then they get out. But we also have to say that also 6 got kicked out. So 14 managed to get from preliminary to permanent and 6 were kicked out at that time. Some of them come with an app, some come in a browser, some come in a combination, some come with VR glasses and other hardware. This is quite open here. Very often I'm asked about the prices. So the prices are vary a lot. On average, about 537 euros when they come into the market at the beginning. And then there comes the negotiations. And then we see a reduction about to roughly 220 euro. You might ask, why is there one DiGA that is so high? This is the only lifetime license for by the 220 euro, it's not changing with respect to the target group, not with respect to the disease that is managed, and not about the size of the market. So this is pretty similar. And we don't really understand why this is so similar for everybody here. Already coming slowly to an end here already. We look at the prescriptions. I only have the data from last year. It's always published in December for the last 12 months here. So we see some DiGA that have roughly 30,000 downloads per year, but we see most of the DiGA in few thousands here. And if you take a little bit, so about 330 euros per download or per prescription, means that not all of the manufacturers of those DiGAs get particularly rich, but some of them manage to have a good business model and others not. Also not others are here included. The red bar shows how many are directly prescribed by the health insurance, and others, the purple ones, are directly given by healthcare professionals. That means a physician or by a psychotherapist in Germany here. But there's a huge difference depending on how well they manage to have their sales reps also in the market here. And what was so new and what was the great innovation here is that we have those patient-relevant improvements of structures and process, in short, PSVV. But we see in reality that almost all DiGA have a medical benefit, and most of them have only medical benefits. So only 8 come with this improvements in structures and processes, which is quite strange because this was the great new thing here. And there are many reasons for that. And one of my PhD students is right now looking at this more detail. And I've also joined some of the conversations that we had with manufacturers, but also with other players in the market, like consultants and people in the field know actually how to assess those here, because they don't know framework to better cope with difficulties in life. So this is hard to standardize. It's also hard to measure automatically, for instance, with a digital biomarker that would be automatically assessed over a longer period of time. And that's why all the manufacturers right now rather go for the medical benefit, because they know they have the questionnaires for quality of life, for instance, which is quite popular. And this is, of course, understandable because they don't want to go into the risk. But also it's a little bit sad because what the intention was to improve not only the medical outcome, but also the structures and processes around, this is not really happening right now in the market. We might see it in the future, and we are also doing research on advocating this improvements in structures and processes, but this is not yet there here. And maybe also in general, there's more research needed on how to better understand what kind of improvements should be done to have a better PSVV here at the end in future studies. So basically, everything is very traditional. It's also allowed to use data that was already collected earlier for the control group. Nobody's doing it. Everybody does a randomized controlled trial. There's little academic research also here. We're about to change it a little bit. And it also seems that there's no benefit for the DiGA manufacturers that actually measure the improvements in structures and process with respect to the price. So the price is flat for everybody. If we look at the market in general, we see that it's relatively low adoption rate so far, some 10,000 prescriptions. For instance, for the Adipositas app, if we think about the people with Adipositas in Germany, the target market is of course much higher, but still not so many patients know about it, but also not so many healthcare professionals know about it. So both sides have to know more about those digital tools and about the evidence that comes along with it. And that's some kind of, both have to be convinced also with respect to a sales perspective. So the healthcare professional needs to prescribe it, but also the user needs to use it at the end. And one very current development is that long-term measures have a hard time. For instance, if you want to have like post-cancer treatments that support people after a cancer treatment, they are regularly kicked out of the DiGA store. Just now, end of October, one was kicked out because it basically couldn't prove that it is valuable to the patients. And this might be due to this relatively short time frame of 1 year, because most of the interventions that you would do in a post-cancer treatment would only work after more than 1 year here. So we might have to, or this might have to be changed in the future. So in summary, this is a really exciting new pathway, and some manufacturers really do a good job in bringing their DiGA to the market. We also see some manufacturers who have 4, 5, or 6 DiGA together, so they have some economies of scale here or it's easier for them to have the 3rd or 4th DiGA in the market. And what I personally really like about it, that this concept of DiGA is really patient-centric, so it's not caring too much about the healthcare professional, but it's really about improving the patient at home, for instance. And there are those 2 regulatory innovations, the positive care effect and the fast-track procedures with the delayed evidence, that are maybe something that other countries will take a look now and maybe adopt also. But as I mentioned, the adoption rates are relatively low, so this could be improved, and also there has to be more research on this whole thing, and I'm doing my little part on that, but also others are doing research on this now. And for the last 2.5 minutes, I want to share with you how other European countries are doing this. We see that France is implementing something similar. President Macron basically said, we want to do copy-paste on the German thing. They have now also something where they have the clinical impact on digital medical devices as we do it have in Germany. But in France, they're extending the scope. So they also have telemonitoring, which is not allowed. And they also go for organizational impact. And that means how the processes within the company are improved. And interestingly, it's true for all medical devices risk classes, also for potentially life-threatening DiGA. This is also the case here. So this is happening there. We see it also in Belgium. We see also something in Austria happening. So I think in a few years from now, we'll have more and more of this in the market here. Don't want to go too much into detail. Maybe the last word about France is that like one major challenge is now how Europe will handle the topic of evidence generation in the several member states of the European Union. So it's going to be interesting if a study that was done in Germany is also suited for the listing in France or in Austria or in Belgium, somewhere else. And I know that there's a task force currently evaluating this. I think this is really exciting to see how the European countries will handle this all together. So now I talked a little bit too long, but I'm very much looking forward to the discussion now. And I will stop this to see you, but I can always come open it again.
Thank you, Moritz. I see Margaret, you raised your hand.
Oh, she's clapping.
No, that was, oh, it was clapping, sorry. It was on a small picture. Okay, clapping, very good. I'm clapping too. Thank you very much for the presentation. Since we're stopping the recording now, for those of you who will watch this later, thanks for listening to the Apply Club Health.